My mother-in-law tried to fake a pregnancy at our wedding. Some people are just born to be the villains in your life story, and my future mother-in-law, Eleanor, was written for the part. She didn't just dislike me, she was on a personal crusade to prove I was a gold-digging harpy out to ruin her perfect family. And her chosen battlefield, her stage for this final, dramatic act of war, was going to be my own wedding day. She had a plan, a secret weapon she thought would destroy me in front of everyone I loved. What she didn't know was that I had found her script, and I was ready to rewrite the ending. The first time I met Eleanor, the ice in her gaze could have frozen hell over. I was Daniel, my fiancé's +1 to a stuffy, old-money family dinner. He had warned me, "My mom can be a little intense." That was like calling a hurricane a bit breezy. Eleanor surveyed me from head to toe, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping a silent, judgmental rhythm on her crystal wine glass. I, in my department store dress, felt like a mud-spattered peasant who had wandered into a royal court. My family, while loving and supportive, were teachers and nurses, not titans of industry with last names on buildings. To Eleanor, I wasn't a person, I was a class-based infraction. The dinner was a masterclass in subtle cruelty. She'd ask questions that sounded innocent, but were layered with condescension. "And what do your parents do, dear?" That's quaint. It's so important for people to have purpose, isn't it? She'd praise Daniel's ex-girlfriend, a woman whose father owned a yacht club, with a wistful sigh. She always understood the importance of legacy. Every word was a tiny poison dart, and by the end of the night, I felt like a pincushion. Daniel, bless his heart, seemed oblivious, chalking it up to his mom just being protective. But I saw the truth in her eyes. It was a cold, calculating disdain. Over the next year, as we planned our wedding, her campaign of psychological warfare escalated. She'd accidentally send me articles about the high divorce rates for couples with disparate financial backgrounds. She'd suggest venues that were laughably out of our budget, then sigh and say, "I just want the best for my son. I hope you can give that to him." Daniel would placate me, telling me not to take it personally, but it was impossible not to. She was a snake, slowly coiling around our happiness, waiting to strike. I started to feel a constant, low-grade anxiety, a prickle on the back of my neck whenever her name appeared on my caller ID. The week before the wedding, it hit a fever pitch. I was at Daniel's childhood home, collecting the last of his things, when I overheard her on the phone in her study. I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but her voice, a low and triumphant hiss, carried through the slightly ajar door. "Don't you worry," she'd said, a smug satisfaction dripping from every word. "It's all been arranged. The perfect little surprise. She'll be exposed for what she is, and Daniel will finally see. By the end of the day, he'll be thanking me for saving him from that little tramp." My blood ran cold. A surprise at the wedding? Exposed? My mind raced through a dozen horrifying scenarios. Was she going to fabricate an affair? Produce some fake documents claiming I was in massive debt? The possibilities were endless, and each one was more terrifying than the last. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't know what she was planning, but I knew one thing for certain. My mother-in-law was coming for me on my wedding day, and she was going to enjoy every second of it. The next 2 days were a blur of final dress fittings and catering confirmations, all performed under a dark cloud of dread. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. Every time an email pinged, my stomach clenched. Eleanor's words echoed in my mind, a sinister soundtrack to what should have been the happiest week of my life. Daniel saw my distraction and tried to soothe me, attributing it to normal wedding jitters. How could I tell him that his own mother was plotting my public humiliation without sounding like a paranoid lunatic? He loved his mom, and despite her frostiness towards me, he still saw her as the woman who had baked him cookies and bandaged his knees. Telling him the truth felt like setting off a bomb in our relationship before it even began. 2 days before the wedding, a plain brown cardboard box arrived at my apartment. There was no return address, only my name and address typed on a shipping label. My first thought was that it was a late wedding gift from an out-of-town relative, but as I held it, a sense of foreboding washed over me. It felt heavy, and something shifted inside when I tilted it. My hands trembled slightly as I carried it to my kitchen table. I grabbed a pair of scissors and carefully sliced through the packing tape. Peeling back the flaps, I wasn't greeted by tissue paper and a gift card. Instead, I was staring at a collection of worn, leather-bound journals and a thick, yellowed manila envelope. On top of everything was a single folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The note was typed, anonymous and to the point. She did this to my sister. I've been waiting for the right moment to stop her from doing it to someone else. Your wedding is that moment. Everything you need is in here. Don't let her win. My mind reeled. Who sent this? A former victim? A disgruntled employee? An ally I never knew I had? I pushed the questions aside and focused on the contents. I opened the manila envelope first. Inside was a chaotic collection of documents, photocopies of bank statements, letters, and what looked like legal notices. As I began to sift through them, a picture of Eleanor started to form, one that was far more sinister than just a snobbish socialite. There were letters she'd written to her own sister, disowning her for marrying a man Eleanor deemed unsuitable. There were printouts of emails where she'd manipulated a business partner, using lies and threats to get her way. There was even a police report from 20 years ago, detailing a complaint filed by a neighbor who accused Eleanor of vandalism after a property dispute, a charge that was mysteriously dropped. This wasn't just a woman who was rude to her son's girlfriend. This was a master manipulator, a woman with a long and documented history of destroying people who stood in her way. And then, tucked into the back of the envelope, I found it. It was a recent online receipt, printed just 3 weeks ago. The item purchased was a high-grade fake positive pregnancy test, ultra-realistic results. And below it, a handwritten note on a sticky note in Eleanor's unmistakably elegant cursive. For the wedding, the final nail in the coffin. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. A fake pregnancy, of course. It was the ultimate accusation, the most damning way to paint me as a desperate, conniving gold digger. She was going to stand up in front of our friends and family, brandish that test, and claim I was trying to trap her son with a baby that didn't exist. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, terrified rhythm. But as the initial shock subsided, a different emotion began to bubble up from deep inside me. Cold, hard fury. She had brought a knife to a fight, and thanks to my anonymous benefactor, I now had a cannon. The first wave of nausea and panic was quickly replaced by a surge of adrenaline so potent it made my hands shake. My mind, previously a fog of fear, became a crystal-clear, tactical command center. The anonymous package wasn't just a lifeline, it was a weapon. Eleanor wanted to ambush me on my wedding day, to leave me stunned, speechless, and ruined in front of everyone I loved. She wanted me to be a passive victim in her little drama. I decided then and there that I would not be a victim. I would be the director. I spent the next 48 hours in a feverish haze of preparation. The world of final floral arrangements and seating charts faded into the background, replaced by a much more urgent mission. I barely slept, fueled by coffee and a righteous, burning anger. I scanned every document from the box onto my laptop, the letters, the receipts, the police report. I organized them chronologically, creating a digital paper trail of Eleanor's decades-long campaign of deceit. Then, I started building the presentation. I know, a PowerPoint presentation for a wedding takedown sounds insane, almost comically corporate. But I needed something visual, something undeniable that could be projected onto a screen for all to see. I titled it simply, A Mother's Love. Each slide was a carefully curated piece of evidence. Slide 1, a picture of a smiling, younger Eleanor. The caption, "This is the woman everyone thinks they know." Slide 2. The receipt for the fake pregnancy test, blown up so the item description was crystal clear. Caption, "This is what she bought 3 weeks ago." Slide 3. A photo of the handwritten sticky note. Caption, "This was her plan for my wedding day." I went further back. I found old photos of her online, from society pages and business newsletters, and juxtaposed them with the evidence of her cruelty. A picture of her at a charity gala next to the letter where she callously disowned her own sister. A photo of her accepting a Businesswoman of the Year award next to the emails where she'd manipulated her partner. I created a narrative, a story not just about her attempt to ruin my wedding, but about a lifetime of using lies and manipulation to get what she wanted. The most damning piece, the one that made my blood run cold, was a series of letters between Eleanor and her mother, Daniel's grandmother. In them, a young Eleanor detailed her plan to seduce a wealthy classmate, Daniel's father, by faking a pregnancy scare of her own. It was the exact same playbook, 30 years in the making. It was her signature move. As I worked, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The anxiety was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. I wasn't just defending myself, I was exposing a predator. I practiced my speech in the mirror, my voice steady and firm. I would start by thanking everyone for coming, speaking of my love for Daniel. Then I would pivot. "Speaking of family," I'd say, my voice laced with a sadness that would soon turn to steel. "It's so important to be honest about the past, to understand the people we welcome into our lives." I would then nod to my best friend, who would be stationed at the laptop, ready to click. The plan was audacious, risky, and had the potential to turn my wedding into a complete circus. But as I looked at the completed presentation, a masterpiece of righteous vengeance, I knew it was the only way. She wanted to use my wedding day to destroy me. I was going to use it to expose her. The dress was hanging in the closet, the flowers were ready to be delivered, and a caterer was preparing a feast. But I was the one who was truly preparing. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear, a picture-perfect day that felt like a personal insult to the storm brewing inside me. While my bridesmaids flitted around me, sipping mimosas and gushing about how beautiful I was going to look, I felt like an actor who had memorized all her lines but forgotten the emotion behind them. I smiled when they smiled, nodded when they cooed over my dress, but my mind was a million miles away, replaying the slides of my presentation, timing my speech to the second. Every brush of the makeup brush against my cheek felt like the ticking of a clock. Every curl placed in my hair felt like a wire in a bomb I was about to detonate. My best friend was the only one who knew the full extent of what was about to happen. I had confided in her the night before, showing her the evidence and the presentation. Her initial shock had morphed into a fierce, protective loyalty. She was now my co-conspirator, my lookout, the one who would man the laptop. She caught my eye in the mirror as the stylist put the finishing touches on my updo and gave me a small, reassuring nod. We were ready. The moment arrived to put on the dress. As I stood before the mirror, the white silk cascading around me, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like a bride, radiant and full of hope, but her eyes held a secret, a dangerous glint of steel. This wasn't just a wedding dress, it was armor. Just then, there was a soft knock on the door. It was Eleanor. She swept into the room, a vision in navy blue silk, a stark contrast to the white and pastel chaos of the bridal suite. She was playing the part of the proud, doting mother-in-law to perfection. "Oh, darling," she cooed, her voice dripping with a sweetness so false it made my teeth ache. "You look acceptable." The backhanded compliment was her opening salvo for the day. She glided towards me, her eyes scanning me from head to toe, looking for any flaw, any sign of weakness. "Daniel is just going to be so thrilled," she continued, reaching out to straighten a non-existent wrinkle in my veil. Her fingers brushed my shoulder, and I had to fight the urge to flinch away. "Family is so important," she whispered, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "And sometimes we have to make sacrifices to protect it, to ensure its future. You understand, don't you, dear?" The threat was thinly veiled, a final, delicious taunt before the main event. She was savoring her power, relishing my supposed ignorance. I looked her straight in the eye, and for the first time, I didn't see a terrifying adversary. I saw a desperate, pathetic woman whose entire identity was built on control. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. It wasn't the nervous smile of a bride. It was the confident smile of a hunter who had cornered her prey. "Oh, I understand completely, Eleanor," I said, my voice calm and even. "More than you could possibly imagine." A flicker of confusion crossed her face, momentarily breaking through her smug facade. She had expected fear, deference, maybe even a tearful plea. She did not expect this quiet confidence. I looked her straight in the eye, and for the first time, I didn't see a terrifying adversary. I saw a desperate, pathetic woman whose entire identity was built on control. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. It wasn't the nervous smile of a bride. It was the confident smile of a hunter who had cornered her prey. "Oh, I understand completely, Eleanor," I said, my voice calm and even. "More than you could possibly imagine." A flicker of confusion crossed her face, momentarily breaking through her smug facade. She had expected fear, deference, maybe even a tearful plea. She did not expect this quiet confidence. A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. It wasn't the nervous smile of a bride. It was the confident smile of a hunter who had cornered her prey. "Oh, I understand completely, Eleanor," I said, my voice calm and even. "More than you could possibly imagine." A flicker of confusion crossed her face, momentarily breaking through her smug facade. She had expected fear, deference, maybe even a tearful plea. She did not expect this quiet confidence. She opened her mouth to say something else, but just then the wedding coordinator popped her head in. "It's time." The moment was here. My best friend gave me one last, determined look. I took a deep breath, the scent of hairspray and flowers filling my lungs. I was no longer just a bride. I was a witness, a prosecutor, and a judge, and I was about to deliver the verdict. Walking down the aisle was a surreal experience. The faces of our friends and family were a blur of smiles and happy tears. The string quartet played a beautiful melody, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. I saw Daniel standing at the altar, his face lit with a love so pure and unburdened, it almost made me feel guilty for the storm I was about to unleash. He was my anchor in all of this, the reason I was fighting so hard. I held his gaze, letting his love wash over me, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to just be a bride in love. I repeated my vows, my voice clear and steady, meaning every single word. When he slipped the ring on my finger, it felt like a seal on a pact, a promise not just to him, but to myself. The priest pronounced us husband and wife, and the world erupted in applause. We walked back down the aisle as a married couple, confetti raining down around us. The next hour was a whirlwind of photos and greetings. I smiled, I laughed, I thanked people for coming, all the while scanning the crowd for Eleanor. I found her holding court near the bar, surrounded by her cronies. A queen holding court. She caught my eye and gave me a small, triumphant smirk. She was biding her time, enjoying the appetizers and champagne before the main course she had planned. The reception began. We had our first dance, a sweet, clumsy shuffle that felt like our own private world. Then came the toasts. Daniel's father gave a heartfelt, slightly awkward speech about his son. My father tearfully welcomed Daniel to our family. Then the MC announced the next speaker. And now, a few words from the mother of the groom, Eleanor, to welcome her new daughter-in-law to the family. Here it was, the moment of truth. Eleanor glided to the podium, tapping the microphone delicately. "Thank you," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "We are all so thrilled to welcome this lovely young woman into our family. Daniel, you look so happy." She turned her gaze to me, her expression softening into a mask of maternal concern. "And as we welcome you, we also embrace the new responsibilities that come with building a life together. Life is full of surprises, isn't it? Unexpected little blessings that can change everything in an instant." She was drawing it out, milking the suspense. The room was quiet, hanging on her every word. Daniel beside me was smiling, completely oblivious to the undercurrent of malice. "And sometimes," Eleanor continued, her voice cracking with manufactured emotion, "those blessings come sooner than we think. Sometimes a new bride feels so much pressure, so much desire to please, that she might rush things to secure her place." She reached into her designer handbag, her movements slow and deliberate. My heart was in my throat. My best friend, seated at our table, had her hand on her laptop, ready. Eleanor pulled out a small white plastic stick, holding it aloft for the room to see. A collective gasp went through the crowd. 2 pink lines were clearly visible. "I found this in the bathroom at the house this morning," Eleanor announced, her voice ringing with false sympathy. "I think we have a little surprise on the way. And while I'm sure this is overwhelming, I just want you to know, dear, that we'll be here to help you through it. No matter what secrets you've been keeping." All eyes were on me. I could feel the weight of their judgment, their shock. Daniel was staring at the pregnancy test, then at me, his face a canvas of confusion and dawning horror. This was it. Her masterpiece of manipulation was complete. I took a deep breath, stood up, and smoothed down my dress. "Eleanor," I said, my voice cutting through the stunned silence, "thank you for that touching speech. You're right, life is full of surprises. And speaking of surprises, I have one of my own." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. All eyes shifted from Eleanor's triumphant face to mine. Daniel looked at me, his expression a painful mixture of betrayal and bewilderment. I gave him a small, reassuring glance before turning my attention back to the podium where Eleanor stood, savoring her victory. I didn't walk to the podium. That was her stage. I stood my ground in the middle of the dance floor, the center of attention. "You know, Eleanor," I began, my voice clear and calm, belying the seismic tremor of adrenaline coursing through me. "You've spent the last year trying to convince Daniel that I'm not good enough, that I'm a gold digger, a liar, someone who can't be trusted. You've worked so hard to find my flaws. But in your obsessive search, you overlooked one crucial detail." I paused, letting the suspense build. "You should have been more worried about your own." I gave a subtle nod to my best friend. In the corner of the room, the large projector screen, which had been displaying a slideshow of our baby pictures, flickered to life. The first slide appeared, the receipt for the fake pregnancy test. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "This," I said, my voice projecting across the silent room, "is a receipt for a high-grade, fake positive pregnancy test. It was purchased online 3 weeks ago. The buyer's name and address match yours, Eleanor." Eleanor's face, a moment ago a picture of smug victory, went ashen. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I pressed on. "But this isn't your first time at the rodeo, is it? This is just your signature move." My friend clicked to the next slide. It was a scanned copy of a letter, written in Eleanor's familiar cursive to her own sister 30 years ago. The highlighted passage read, "I'm sorry it has to be this way, but I will not have you tarnish our family's name by marrying that mechanic. You are dead to me." Gasps echoed through the room. I continued, clicking through the slides one by one. The emails where she'd manipulated her business partner. The police report for the vandalism. Each slide was another nail in the coffin she had so meticulously built for me. The final slide was the most damning of all. It was a letter from a young Eleanor to her mother, detailing her plan to fake a pregnancy scare to trap Daniel's father into marriage. The handwriting was identical to the note on the receipt. The room was a sea of shocked, horrified faces. People were staring at Eleanor not as a proud matriarch, but as a monster. Her husband, Daniel's father, was on his feet, his face a mask of disbelief and shame. He looked at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. I finally turned to face Eleanor directly. She was trembling, her face a contortion of rage and terror. "You wanted to expose me in front of everyone I love," I said, my voice dropping to a low, intense register. "You wanted to paint me as a liar. So I think it's only fair that everyone here gets to see the real you. A woman who would disown her own sister, ruin her business partners, and even lie to her own husband, all to get what she wants."
You didn't buy that test because you thought I was pregnant. You bought it because you are a pathological manipulator, and this is the only way you know how to operate. I looked at Daniel. The confusion in his eyes had been replaced by a profound, gut-wrenching clarity. He saw the truth, all of it, laid bare on the screen for the world to see. He looked from the screen to his mother's horrified face and finally back to me. In that moment, he wasn't just my husband, he was my witness, and he believed me. The silence that followed my final words was deafening, a heavy, suffocating blanket that smothered the joyous atmosphere of the reception. It was broken by a strangled, animalistic cry from Eleanor. "Lies! It's all lies!" she shrieked, her voice shrill and unhinged. "She's a liar! She fabricated this!" But it was no use. The evidence was irrefutable, projected 10 feet high for all to see. Her husband, Richard, slowly walked towards her, his face a canvas of profound sorrow and disgust. He didn't yell, he didn't scream, he just looked at her, his voice a low, wounded whisper. "Eleanor, is it true? All of it?" Her frantic denials died in her throat. The look on his face was all the confirmation anyone needed. He turned to Daniel and me, his eyes filled with a deep paternal regret. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I had no idea." He then took his wife by the arm, his grip firm but gentle. "We're leaving," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Now." As he led a defeated and sobbing Eleanor from the room, a strange thing happened. A few of their guests, the ones from their old money circle, gathered their things and scurried out after them, unable to stomach the drama. But the vast majority of our friends and family remained. And then someone started to clap. It was my uncle, a big, boisterous man with a huge heart. Then my cousins joined in. Then Daniel's college buddies. Soon, the entire room was filled with applause, not for a newly married couple, but for a warrior who had just won a battle. It was a wave of support so powerful it almost brought me to my knees. Daniel finally moved, closing the distance between us in 2 long strides. He wrapped his arms around me, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I'm so sorry," he whispered into my hair, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you from her." I pulled back, cupping his face in my hands. "You didn't have to," I said, a single tear finally escaping and tracing a path down my cheek. "We protected us." The reception was, for all intents and purposes, over. The caterers packed up the uneaten food, the band packed their instruments. But no one left. Our friends and family stayed, turning the disaster into an impromptu after-party. We sat together, Daniel and I, and for the first time, he heard the whole story. I told him about the anonymous box, the sleepless nights, the presentation. He listened, his anger at his mother growing with every word, replaced by an overwhelming sense of pride in me. A week later, a final anonymous email appeared in my inbox. It contained only one sentence. "My sister can finally rest in peace. Thank you." The mystery of my benefactor was solved, a small, satisfying coda to the whole ordeal. In the months that followed, Daniel and I worked to heal. He went through a period of intense guilt, but we faced it together, our bond forged in the fires of that disastrous day. We cut off all contact with Eleanor. Richard filed for divorce a month later, and from what we heard, she had isolated herself completely, a queen dethroned by her own handiwork. Our wedding photos are a strange mix of joy and chaos. There's one of Daniel and me cutting the cake, laughing, while in the background, the projector screen still shows the damning receipt. It's not the storybook wedding I had dreamed of, but it's ours. It's the story of how we faced down a monster, not with anger or violence, but with the truth. It's the story of how our love wasn't just tested, but tempered and proven in the most public and unbelievable way possible. Eleanor tried to use our wedding day to destroy us, but in the end, all she did was give us the ultimate foundation for our marriage, a shared victory, an unshakable trust, and one hell of a story to tell our future children.